All right, today we're going to be looking at graphs of linear equations, and we're going to be looking at 3 different parts of the graph and how to write the equation. So the first part that we're going to look for is something called the X Intercept. And this is where our line crosses the x-axis. So here you can see we have a blue line, and I want to know, where does this blue line cross the x-axis? So here, if I highlight my x-axis, I can see that the blue line crosses the x-axis at -2. So here my x-intercept would be x equals -2. All right, let's look at another graph. Let's look for the same part, but a new graph. So here we have a red line, and we're still looking for the x-intercept. So again, this is where our graph, here we see the x crosses the x-axis. So if I look at where this red line crosses the x-axis, we got the same answer. X equals -2. All right, let's look at one more, just to make sure. All right, here we've got another one, and again, we want the x-intercept. And this is where, here's my x-axis. This is where does my graph, where does my line cross the x-axis? So if I look at my line, here is where it crosses the x-axis. So here, x equals 3. So if we were to write a definition for our x-intercept, this would be where the line crosses the x-axis. So here, if we have our little graph, this is the y, this is the x-axis. We're looking at the x-axis for our x-intercept. Okay? So now, let's go back up to this first graph again. And now that we have our x-intercept, now we want to look for the y-intercept. So this one's going to be y equals, and if my x-axis goes across, my y-axis will be up and down. So this right here would be my y-axis. And if I look at where this blue line crosses the y-axis, here it crosses at 4. All right, let's see if we can find it for number 2. Again, we want the y-intercept. Just going to put int for intercept. So y equals, again, I want my vertical axis, my y-axis. So what number does this cross at? This red line crosses our y-axis at 3. So here, y equals 3. And on our last graph, again, we want y-intercept. So it'll be y equals, and I'm looking at, here's the y-axis. So when I look here, this one crosses at 4. So here, y equals 4. So our y-intercept, we get a definition for our y-intercept. This is where the line crosses the y-axis. So again, if we think about our graph, we have an x-axis and a y-axis. Our y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. And we've got one more piece that we are going to look for. And this is something called our slope. So we're going to see how much does our graph move from point 2, or this -2, to this point 4. So here I'm going to think about how many up did I go and how many over did I go. So if I start at -2, here I would count up 1, 2, let me get some better hops here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is up 4 and then over 1, 2. So how I'll write this for my slope is I went up 4 over 2. So then I would end up with 4 over 2. And if we put this in our handy dandy calculator, we will get so here I want to go to alpha, y equals, enter, and I'll have 4 go down over 2. When I press enter, I'll get a slope of 2. So now there's one final thing we can do, and that's put this into an equation. Y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope. So our slope is m, and where b is our y-intercept. So what this would look like would be y equals m is my slope, which is 2, x plus my y-intercept, which here is 4. And that would be the equation. All right, let's look at another one. So here we've got number 2. We've already found the x-intercept. We've already found the y-intercept. So now we need to look for the slope. So again, we want to think how many here did we go up and how many did we go over to get from 2 to 3. So up, I want to count 1, 2, 3. And then over 1, 2. So here I would do up 3, over 2. So then I want that with just numbers, 3 over 2. And if I put it in my calculator, alpha y equals enter, 3 over 2. I get the same thing, 3 over 2. So my slope would just be this 3 over 2. So again, in the end, if we think about y equals mx plus b, for our m, we're going to plug in the slope. And for b, we're going to plug in the y-intercept. So if I look here, I would have y equals, for m, I'm going to take my slope, which is 3 over 2, and then I'll have x plus, and then I want my y-intercept, which here is 3. So for b, I would have plus 3. And that would be my final equation. All right, we've got one more just to make sure we really got it. So here on this last one, again, we found the x-intercept, we found the y-intercept. So the last piece we need is the slope. And on this one here, to get from 4 to 3, now we're going to go down. So we want to know how many down are we going and how many over are we going. So let's count down. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So for down, I'm going to put -4, down 4, and then over 1, 2, 3. So for slope, here I would put down 4, over 3. So again, when I see down, I want to put -4, and then 3. And again, I can put this in my calculator. Alpha y equals, enter, -4 over 3. And when I press enter, I still get -4 over 3. So this right here would be my final slope. So for our last piece of the equation, y equals mx plus b. Again, for the m, we're going to plug in the slope. And for the b, we're going to plug in the y-intercept. Good. So I'll have y equals, for my slope here, I've got -4 over 3. X plus, for my y-intercept, I've got 4. All right, and then if for a definition for slope, so here slope is the letter M. Slope, we can think of, it's the change from one point to another, or how is it moving. So if we think of M, we think of movement. From one point to another. Oh, that's not how you spell another. There we go. Movement from one point to another. So here, what we want to think of with the graph is rise or fall over run. So what we were saying in the picture was up or down over how many over. So these are the same thing, just different words. Rise over run, or you can think of how many up or down, how many over for your slope. Okay, so take these 3 and you're going to have some practice looking at graphs and finding the x-intercept, y-intercept, and the slope.